Yo, what's up? Circuit Score here, and today we're going to be checking out the new NVIDIA app and all of the new features that they just added to the recent beta update. Now, if you don't want to wait for the beta update, it is supposed to release in a stable state next week, but I want to get a jump on some of these new features and test them out in-game before the stable release. So here on the NVIDIA page, and I'll link this in the description, but this is the new app update and everything that they've added. Some of the key features I'm most excited about are global DLSS overrides, smooth motion, which I've covered in a previous video on a preview driver, available for the RTX 40 series GPUs, a beta release for Project G Assist, as well as some additional in-game enhancements that we're going to go over real quick before we do a little bit of testing here. So just scrolling down here, the DLSS override global setting. Now this is really cool. People have been asking for this for a long time, and there have been workarounds in order to get this to work as a global override in apps such as NVIDIA Profile Inspector, but now it's available in the official app. So what this means is we can enable a toggle for all of our games across the board for DLSS multi-frame generation if you have a 5000 series card, DLSS frame generation model upgrades to enable the latest DLSS frame generation model for 50 series as well as 40 series GPUs, DLSS transformer model upgrade. This will allow you to force DLSS 4 as well as DLAA and Ultra Performance modes. Ultra Performance mode is a new mode that they released about a month ago or maybe 2 months ago that improves performance but also tries to maintain visual quality. So as it stated here, previously you had to do this per game and it was kind of a pain. So it's very nice that there is now just a global toggle for all supported games. The next feature they added is a DLSS override status, now visible in game. So what that means is now we can see which DLSS model is being used in game. So you can see here it says preset K. That's the latest preset for DLSS 4 transformer model. It also tells you which version you're using. So this is quality here. So we're going to be doing a little testing with that, see how well that works. Smooth motion for GeForce RTX 40 series GPUs. Now this one I was really excited about, and I hope they did make some improvements to it because in the preview driver it worked pretty well, but it was still pretty unstable in a lot of games that I tested. So I'm hoping that the beta version adds a little more stability. And for those of you that don't know what smooth motion is, smooth motion allows you to enable frame generation on a driver level. So games that don't have official frame generation support, such as Red Dead Redemption 2, you can enable smooth motion in the app, and then it'll enable frame generation, like I said, on a driver level. And we can test this by looking at the NVIDIA overlay. The next thing they've added is Project G Assist, which is in a beta state. This is the first release as far as I'm concerned. It's a local language model that runs on your computer to help you tweak settings. Now, I'm not sure I'm entirely excited about this. I mean, I feel like if I was saying, hey, go turn on DLSS, I could just do that myself in a few clicks. But it might be helpful for people that don't know where those settings are or don't know where to go, and they just want to talk to the chat bot and have them adjust those system settings for them. Now, there is some other things it can do, like it can open up multiple windows. Like you could say, open up Discord with my game and also Steam app all at the same time. So there are a few other things that it can do, and maybe I'll do another video on testing that Project G Assist later down the line, but for now we're going to probably just skip that one for this update and focus more on performance testing. This is another kind of cool setting. If you have multiple monitors, you can now merge all of your monitors together to be one giant widescreen. So if you're playing like a racing game or a racing sim, this would be very helpful for people that just want to like sync all of their monitors together and just make it one giant display. And the next thing here is enhance older games with legacy 3D settings. So prior, if you wanted to adjust these settings, you had to go to the NVIDIA control panel, which is still installed on your system, by the way. And I think they're just slowly phasing it out. They're trying to slowly bring features from the NVIDIA control panel to the new NVIDIA app. So they're starting to do that here, and this is legacy 3D settings. And stuff like this, like anti-aliasing, texture filtering, to force it in older games. The next feature here that they've added in the beta update is for laptop users, Advanced Optimus enhancements. So it should do a better job of switching between your integrated graphics and your dedicated graphics card in order to save power. So that's kind of cool. And it says more features are in development. And one other thing, and maybe I missed it in one of these groups, I know they've also tried to improve the frame generation model to use less RAM and less system performance. In other words, in-game frame generation should be more efficient now. So in order to get this update, you have to launch your NVIDIA app, have it pinned on my desktop here on the task manager. You have to go to settings and then about. And then there's just a little checkbox here. It's pretty easy. All I have to do is check this checkbox, opt into beta or experimental features. And as soon as you do this, like it was instantaneous for my system. It popped up in the top and it said you have a driver update. And let's see what that driver update number is. Had a user asking me. So the weird thing is it's still showing me the exact same driver number. However, I definitely did update these drivers yesterday for the beta version. And the other weird thing is it still says April 16th, which is obviously not right because we're in August. But the preview driver did the same thing. It still said April 16th. So I don't know if that's a bug on NVIDIA's end, but you will get the update. And you'll know that features are working if you have like the global override settings, which is the first thing we're going to look at here. So now they've added in this tab here, global override settings for DLSS. You can go ahead and look at this one here. So DLSS override model presets. Go ahead and just change this to the latest for all games. You can also do custom. See what that does here. Okay, so this is just saying for everything. Oh, this is what I was looking for. So you can force preset K. However, I do think preset K is also latest, but I might just try custom here and just go with preset K. And then for these, ray reconstruction latest, and then the frame generation model latest as well. Go ahead and hit apply. And then this setting here, DLSS override frame generation mode, I believe this is for multi-frame generation. I have a 4000 series card, so I do not have access to that. And then DLSS override super resolution mode. Let's go ahead and see what this is. Okay, I was curious because I thought this was the same thing, but no, this is the mode for DLSS. So you've got your quality, DLAA, balanced, performance, ultra performance, and then custom. And you know what? The performance profile on DLSS 4 is pretty solid. So let's just go ahead and stick with performance. Hit apply. Sometimes I even use ultra performance because I think it looks almost as good as the balance profile on the DLSS 3, the older version. But we'll stick with performance for now. The first game I want to test out was Red Dead Redemption 2. Because as far as I'm aware, it does not have frame generation in game. So this should be a good game for us to test it out with. And we're going to be testing out smooth motion. So if you scroll down here, you can see DLSS override model presets. It's already been set for us. Frame generation's not supported. Ray reconstruction's not supported. But the super resolution DLSS 4 preset K is supported. And then we wanted to test out smooth motion. So I already have turned it on here. And when you turn it on, it also is going to activate low latency mode to ultra. It allows us to force frame generation on a driver level. And that reminds me, before we launch this game, we should go and look at some of our new overlay settings here. So if I press Alt and then Z on my keyboard, I'll bring up this overlay. And let's see. Oh, down here, yep, statistics. And there should be now some new settings that we can add. I might have already added them when I did some pre-testing. Okay, yeah, so we scroll down here. We've got frame generation model override, super resolution model override, and we might as well add this one as well, super resolution mode override. That should be set to performance. And then I guess we might as well add these as well. Just add all of them. And then this one I already had set up because I was on the preview driver prior, but this will tell us if smooth motion is working or not. So up at the top here, obviously nothing has populated yet because we haven't started a game, but you've got all your different settings here, frame generation override, and then this is the quality mode, super resolution override with quality mode, ray reconstruction, and then smooth motion All right, let's launch Red Dead Redemption 2. All right, so here we are in game. And I've got two overlays up right now. I have my overlay, my MSI Afterburner overlay, which uses Riva Statistics Tuner that comes bundled with MSI Afterburner. So that's the one with all the colors and whatnot. See, I have a 4080 Super with a 9800X3D and 32 gigs of RAM. And it's interesting because it's showing me that I'm getting 100 FPS. Which this is actually probably a pretty good game to test because it's giving me the accurate frame rate without smooth motion on. However, you can see in the very top right corner that SM says it's active. That's smooth motion. And then on the far left side on the NVIDIA overlay, you can see it says 196, 97 FPS, which means that smooth motion is enabled, which is awesome because we're essentially getting 200 FPS at 4K, which is wild. So, go ahead and look at some of our settings real quick. Make sure that everything is maxed out. So, here we go, 4K. We want enabled plus boost on for your low latency if you're ever turning on frame generation. And then everything should be set to ultra. Let's make sure, oh, like we had one that was not set to ultra. Oh, and this is interesting too. So it does say we're using preset K. You can see it at the very top there, the SR space OVR. The super resolution override is what that stands for. It says preset K, but then it says off, which means that the performance profile is not kicking in. So that's kind of interesting. We can adjust this in game though, which is kind of nice. So I can actually change this performance and it should still stick with that DLSS 4, but then we can use the performance mode that we were trying to do as a global override. So that's one setting that didn't work. Of course, this isn't a beta state, so you got to expect some things aren't going to work sometimes. Oh, here's another one here. Want to make sure all these are set to the max. Okay, there we go. I don't know why all my settings weren't set to the max. I haven't played this game in a minute. But most of those were pretty minor. Now let's go back and see what kind of frame rate we're getting now. Okay, so still pretty admirable. 92 FPS with everything maxed out. And then with the smooth motion, 184 FPS. 180. Kind of close to about 180. Dipping as low as 175. And then you can also see my 1% lows. So yeah, I mean, this, to me, this is very, very smooth. And one thing I noticed is the latency doesn't really work very well. It kind of depends on a per game basis. So you can see it says 0 ms, which to me means it's not actually reading anything. But if I am doing this on my end, I am using a controller so that I can make the gameplay video a little smoother for you guys, but I'm not barely noticing any input latency. And I guess I could try to switch over real quick to keyboard mouse. And yeah, I mean, it's very responsive. So if I switch to keyboard mouse here, same thing. I'm not noticing barely any input latency at all. And we're getting like 180 FPS, 190. This is awesome. This is incredibly smooth. And it may not be smooth on your end because YouTube obviously caps the frame rate to 60 FPS when I'm recording. So on your end, you're seeing 60 FPS, but on my end, this is unbelievably smooth. I do have a 240 hertz monitor, so that helps as well. And I mean, that's another thing you could do too. If you had a 144 hertz monitor, you could cap it. So yeah, this is awesome. And I love this new overlay thing. I love the fact that we can now see that it's using preset K, but it's because before we had to actually use like a registry file, and it put like an overlay in the bottom corner of the screen so you could see if you actually had the right DLSS preset set. And another thing is we no longer have to use like programs like DLSS Swapper, because the latest version should now come with the latest DLSS version. All right, so let's go ahead and test out another game here. And the next game I wanted to test was the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remaster with the new frame generation override. So first thing here, I'm actually going to turn off the frame generation from latest and just use the 3D application settings here. We'll keep DLSS 4 enabled. Let's go ahead and just set it to K. Hit apply. The reason we're doing this is I want to see what kind of performance gains we're getting with the new frame generation model versus the old one. So if I turn it on to 3D application settings, it should use the old model. And we can tell this by looking at this chart here. I'll link this in the description as well. But this is nice to show what games are compatible in-game with the checkbox, that's in-game. And NVU tells us that we can activate the latest frame generation model as an override. NV stands for the NVIDIA App. So if we go back here, let's go ahead and launch the game. Check this one more time, make sure we're set to 3D application settings, and launch it. All right, so here we are in game, and we can see our super resolution override preset K is set to on. And we got the frame generation override off because we just want to see what kind of performance we're getting with the old frame generation. So let's go make sure that's on. So we go into settings here, and it should be towards the bottom. You can see everything is set to ultra 4K. And okay, we have DLSS on in ultra performance mode. Let's actually bump that down to performance mode. And then we have frame generation on. There's an automatic mode. I'm not exactly sure what that does. Let's just turn it on for now. Hit apply changes. We also wanted that low latency mode on plus boost. So okay, looks like we're getting about 145 FPS. Not too bad here. Kind of 150, kind of jumping all over the place. 150, 160. But pretty much in the 140s. And then going back down this way towards the lake, about 135. So, okay, let's go ahead and save it right here so we can keep this consistent. Okay. Now we're going to exit out of this game, and we're going to go ahead and enable that new frame generation override mode. So we're back here in the NVIDIA app. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to latest, the frame generation DLSS override. Hit apply. Now let's go ahead and jump back into game. All right, so now we're back in game. And one thing I noticed, I forgot to turn off smooth motion. So I actually did a video on this a couple weeks ago. And this is how you can get a 3x frame generation. Essentially, it's multi-frame generation on a 4000 series card. And I wasn't actually trying to keep those both enabled, but it seems to be working very well. So you can see in the very right corner, I've got smooth motion set to active. That's a driver level frame generation. And then we also have in-game frame generation. So it's kind of cool. We're able to test this with both, and we still did get some of those improvements. But let's just make sure that our frame generation is still turned on. Yep, still turned on. And then at the very top, you can see it says frame gen FGOVR is set to the latest. And prior, we were getting about like 143, kind of going up this hill. Let's go ahead and do a quick run here. And yeah, we're getting a pretty solid improvement. Going anywhere from about 143 to 160. So about like 15 frame difference. And even going back down this way, we're getting about a 10 FPS difference looking at the water here. Went from about 135 to 140. So that latest frame generation is pretty solid. And this is also with smooth motion enabled. And it's pretty smooth. It's not too bad. It might be a little bit less smooth than a game, say, like Witcher that we tested in that last video. A small stutter there, but that's probably something that is more of an issue with Unreal Engine 5. But yeah, this is solid. So this essentially is smooth motion and frame generation with the latest model. And we're getting a solid, I mean, for this game is not very well optimized. For getting 4K and 150 FPS going through some of these areas, this is not too bad at all. And just for kicks, let's just test smooth motion with it on by itself. So let's go ahead and turn off frame generation. Firm. I know we already tested this out earlier, but I just kind of wanted to see what kind of frame rate we're getting with just smooth motion on. And I did notice there's kind of some weird render latency data shown. So it might actually be a little smoother if I end up turning off the MSI Afterburner overlay. I noticed that in my last video. Although I think they've made some improvements so that we can still use MSI Afterburner. And I think it does feel about the same. So not too bad. And you can see that we're getting about 105 FPS. This is with just smooth motion frame generation turned on a driver level. Pretty solid. So anyway, that'll do it for this video. If you guys like this kind of content, consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, have a wonderful day.